for the invitation today. As Diana so kindly said, my name is Lisa Marie Blaschka, and I am working in Learnlife Barcelona. I'm responsible for their home learning programs and also for implementing HyFlex within our organization. And so first I'd like to talk a little bit about what do we mean by opening up pedagogy. And for me, there's a lot of definitions out there. This is something that DeRosa and Yanjiani have been working on for the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years, and really looking at, how do we open up our pedagogy, our teaching and learning experiences. So if you want to read more about that, I really encourage you to go to their site. Some of the ideas that I've gleaned from them, and also from my work in the area of self-determined learning and pedagogy, is some of the things that we really need to do is we need to give our learners agency. We need to make them responsible for their learning, give them environments where they can be responsible. Applying learner-centered methodologies. What kinds of methodologies can we apply so that the learner is really the center of these learning experiences? And then another thing that I mean by open pedagogy is co-creating the learning experience with the learner, so that the teacher isn't making all the decisions about the learning experience, but also the curriculum, co-creating and co-designing the curriculum, as well as the assessment. What Orna was talking about in terms of the assessment. Also collaborating together and assessing and determining the learning journey. So these are all just some examples, and I'm not going to go into what open pedagogy is. I really encourage you to do that research on your own. So what do I understand agency to be? Agency is really the power to act, giving learners an opportunity to make decisions about their learning, and where the learning is actually initiated by the learner. And why do I think that's important? Well, I like to use this quote from Sean Michael Morris, who says, agency gives us mastery over ourselves. And I think this is really important, not just for kids, but for adults as well. We want to be the masters of our futures, of our destinies, and making decisions about what we do. So why not start with learning? Why not start with education? And these are some of the things that we do at Learnlife. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we realize that. Really central to our approach in teaching and learning is these five values. And I really like that Orna brought up Mahabali and just how we really need to work on this pedagogy of care. This ties very closely into this, because in order to have open pedagogy, in order to have an environment where learners really feel like they can contribute, be responsible, there needs to be an environment where there are positive relationships, where there's empathetic collaboration, where they're growing through adventure, where we have fair communities and authentic trust. And another reason why I think this is really important is that we really want to move into HyFlex environments. We're not going to be able to realize these in environments that are teacher-centered, that are controlled by proxies, by surveillance and proctoring companies. We need to have an environment where learners feel safe. And if we provide them with these environments where there's empathy, where there's mutual trust and respect, I believe that we can move very quickly back and forth from online to face-to-face and have a really good mix and create those HyFlex environments that we want to achieve. So how is it that Learnlife has gone about this? Well, we didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, you know what, we're going to just start doing this kind of self-determined, self-directed learning with kids. What Learnlife did was they went and they researched, visited over 100 different innovative schools around the globe, put together the best research, the best practice examples, and then came up with what they call a personal learning paradigm. And it consists of these 3 different areas. First, preparing to create that environment where learners can really engage in their learning, and then implementing it, and then supporting it. And so if you want to read more about the paradigm, the link is included at the bottom. So our approach is really focused on changing the mindset and making it about moving from a standardized education into personal learning. And this is where my research in pedagogy and self-determined learning has really been applied significantly. And that's really looking at moving a learner from being in an environment that's teacher-centric, where the teacher makes the decisions, where curriculum is mandated, to moving to a place where learners have agency, can make decisions about their learning, become more self-directed, and really are more self-aware of what their skills are, what their competencies are, and what they can contribute to society. And the other thing that's really, I guess, for me, is cool, having worked in online environments for over 2 decades and teaching in online environments, is that the more self-directed learners, that the more this learning becomes personal, the more self-directed learners become, and the easier it is for them to learn in self-directed and online learning environments. Because what we often see as teachers, at least at the higher education level, is our students will show up and they don't know how to teach. They are not how to teach, how to learn in a self-directed way. They want us to direct their learning. And so it's a whole unlearning process. Now, wouldn't it be cool if we were able to have kids come into higher education and they're already able to do this? And this ties in with what Orna was talking about with authentic assessment. What if they could do that before they even get to higher education? So how do we apply it at Learnlife? How do we design these kinds of environments? Well, we base what we do on a learner-centered approach, and this involves using learner-centered methodologies. And these are things like experience-based learning, peer-to-peer, crowdsourced social learning, project-based, challenge-based, social entrepreneurship, really authentic learning where they're choosing what it is that they want to do and then they're pursuing it independently, and passion projects. What kinds of things are they really driven by? What are they excited by? And so these are the kinds of things that we do. And again, our approach is based in trusting the learner and being empathetic with them and giving them the agency to make decisions about their learning. And as I said before, this also makes it a lot easier for them to move back and forth from being in an online or in a face-to-face environment to having to move to an online environment. And we've had that happen so many times in the last few months as Barcelona, as you know, restrictions have lifted, restrictions have gone back down again. Some of our learners have contracted COVID, have had to go home. So the whole bubble group is home. So the way that we were able to do that is because there is this environment of trust and empathy, and they are self-directed in what they do. So what's our approach? How do we do this? Here are just some examples of how we go about it. We really co-create, co-design the learning experience. Each learner has their own personal learning plan, and we do this using different building blocks that contains things, for example, from numeracy and literacy, science, to things like having a real talk where they have open discussions about things that are really critical for them or interesting for them, their passions and their interests. And then we co-create the curriculum and we create this learning plan for them. On top of that, learners can also design their own curriculum. And these are things what we call adelantes, where they take a skill or they take knowledge that they have, and then they teach the other learners within Learnlife about how to do these things. And these are really exciting. The kids really love learning from each other. The learners give a lot of input in terms of what kinds of things they're interested in learning. For example, right now, the thing that they really want to discuss is the war in the Ukraine right now, and they want to talk about how did this happen? What can they do to help? And so this is an opportunity for us to shape the curriculum based on learner input. We also have learner-led Fridays, which is like the Adelantes, where they will actually design the curriculum for that day. And then we also apply the kinds of things that Orna was talking about in terms of assessment. We co-create that assessment with them. The learners create their own portfolios. They go through stages of autonomy where they look at where am I in terms of my self-directed learning? How can I improve? Where are there areas for growth? And another really neat thing that the kids do, which I, as an academic, never thought that kids, especially teenagers, would ever be able to do. And that's what we call 360s. And that's when at the end of what we call a cycle of learning, the kids present what they learned, and they present it to their peers, they present it to their parents, they present it to the learning guides, who are, I guess in academic talk would be teachers, and then they get feedback. And my first thought was, I've sat in on a lot of academic, peer assessment type of environments, where I'm asking students to give feedback on their peers, and I get the kind of feedback like, oh, it looks great. The feedback that these kids were getting, because they're in an environment of empathy and trust, they were and they really are focused on helping each other grow. It was so open, it was so honest, it almost brought me to tears. And people know me that that's not easy to do with me. And it was just so exciting to watch these kids just help each other and support each other in their learning. And so 360s are really a big part of what we do at Learnlife in terms of assessment. So this is just an example of what we do within our primary online environment in terms of helping the kids just create what it is that they want to learn, how their personal learning plan is going to look like. And we incorporate what as I said, building blocks that focus on learning to think, learning to be, learning to live, to relate, and learning how to do. And then they build their own personal learning plan based on that. And here are just a couple of examples of that: passion projects, opportunities for them to explore. Then they can also do things with literacy and numeracy, philosophy and art, really the STEAM, getting them to really be engaged in a fun and energetic way. We've also got what we call Spark, which is to spark their passions and their interests. We have friendship circles where they get together and talk about how they're doing, getting support from each other. And then of course, they've got one-on-one mentorship. Lastly, I want to share with you a passion example. This comes from Celine, who is one of our change makers. Celine is 17, is in Barcelona learning, and she created an online youth movement called Log Off, which is really a movement to get kids away from their social media, away from their phones, to really focus on their wellness and their well-being. And this is really her passion, and it's something that Learnlife has then been promoting and supporting to help her realize this, because it's a next step for her, because she wants to be involved in really social movements as they in the ground root social movements. So this is to create what we're trying to do is to create these kinds of environments where kids can really pursue their passions like Celine has, and to become entrepreneurs, which I think is also a really important skill for kids both today and tomorrow within learning environments. So if you want to do this, what is it that you have to do? What kinds of things do you need to think about? Really designing a pedagogy of agency, giving them the agency, the responsibility, the ability to self-direct and self-determine their learning. And it's really focused on developing those self-directed and self-determined learning skills. Co-create the full learning experience with the learner, not just what it is, what topics they'll explore, but also what that experience will look like, how the learner will go about that experience, what kinds of activities will they undertake, and then most importantly, how they'll assess whether learning happened and what are their areas for growth. And then also co-designing the curriculum with them using learner-centered methodologies. And a really, really important part, and I can't emphasize this enough, is the reflection process, and again and again and again through that reflection process. So that's how we do learning at Learnlife, and that's how we introduce open pedagogy within our programs. So I hope that was interesting for you, and if you want to learn more, feel free to get in touch with me and we can talk more. And thank you, Diana, for inviting me today.